How's it going, everyone? It's the Natural here and welcome back to another video on the channel. In MotoGP, has this plus this plus this made MotoGP boring? Also, to new fans, what is aerodynamics in MotoGP? Well, we will be diving into that conversation and diving into what aerodynamics is in MotoGP, has aerodynamics made MotoGP predictable, boring, and has it made the bikes easy to ride? So, what is aerodynamics, and has it always been in the sport since its inception back in 1949? Aerodynamics in MotoGP pretty much is to have all the aero on the bikes to do one thing and one thing only, and that is to go fast. To go fast in corners, to go fast down the straights, to go fast everywhere. Pretty much to make a bike that does one thing: fast. And to gain performance, and pretty much to build the spaceship of a bike to win. But the question is, has aerodynamics always been in MotoGP since the early 2000s, the 90s, the 80s, the 70s, the 60s, and the 50s? Well, yes and no to that question. From 1949 right through pretty much to the early 1950s, there wasn't really any aerodynamics in the sport. But that all changed when this came in the late 1950s. And you may ask, what is this absolute contraption of a thing? This is a dustbin fairing. And why is it called a dustbin fairing? Well, it pretty much looks like a dustbin on the front of the bike. But this was banned in 1957 because, on safety grounds, the high speeds made this bike unrideable going into the corners. Then during the 60s to the 80s, in the two-stroke era, MotoGP really was just basic bikes, really all about riding style, all about engine performance, not really to do with aerodynamics during the 60s, 70s and the 80s. But in the 1990s, aerodynamics was sort of making a comeback through wind tunnels, and a lot of teams during the late 90s, starting to the four-stroke era of MotoGP in 2002, were starting to do wind tunnels and find advantages through wind tunnels and having modifications done on the body work of the bike. Then the four-stroke era of MotoGP began in 2002, and this is when the whole landscape of the sport completely changed. Through electronics, through advancements in engine performance, riding styles, and also aerodynamics. Because Ducati came into the sport in 2003, and pretty much during the near end of the 990 era, they were starting to tweak and do a little bit of aerodynamics during that time. But it only got into the 800cc era and the 1000cc era, which we're currently in MotoGP, where really it came out of Pandora's box. But like I said, in the 800cc era, with the bikes becoming lighter and agile, this increased performance on aero to reduce drag along with enhancement performance with winglets and other aero parts. Then came in 2012 the 1000cc era, and during this era, 2012, 2013 and the start of 2014, it really wasn't any aero on the bikes at all. But that all changed when this man came in to Ducati at the end of 2014, but definitely in 2015, when he brought these little wings on the front of the Ducati. And this is when it all changed. Pandora's box was open when Gigi Dall'Igna came in and put wings on the bikes. But these wings were banned in 2016 because of safety grounds, because obviously they were getting modified and modified and modified, and they were becoming dangerous. Not only if you crash, you could literally clip one of these wings and it can give you, really bad injuries. And also overtaking, you could literally clip one of these wings at over 200 miles an hour down the straight and it could cause God knows what. But Ducati and GD Linea came in again and modified the wings and put them on the fairings. The race organisers didn't think there was an issue with this, and not only did Ducati kept modifying the fairings and having so many different aero on not only the front, also the rear, also the diffuser, God knows what other parts of the bike as well. Other manufacturers were also seeing what Ducati were doing, and they saw how high their performance was getting with Aero as well. They also came in and put Aero on their bikes too, which meant the bikes went from this to this. It's like, if anybody's ever played Pokemon or knew anything about Pokemon, and you got the evolution of a Pokemon, for example, you got Charmander goes to a Charizard, Squirtle goes to a Blastoise. That literally is what these MotoGP bikes became. They went from a cute little Charmander, Squirtle, to an absolute beast of a what the heck sort of creature is this? Bikes are these? We have it today, really. But there was one thing that came in at the tail end of 2019 and definitely in 2020 and 2021 that for me has completely ruined the racing and has caused so much stress on the tires, and that is these ride height devices and hose shot devices. Why? Because these devices for me are an absolute pain in the backside for racing, really, and for me it's one of the reasons why the racing has become so pretty predictable and lame, really. These ride height devices came in tail end of 2019 and 2020 and 2021. Pretty much the bike squats down and you just go so fast down the straight. What this meant obviously is overtaking down the straight became even harder, which means you break in even deeper to try and overtake, and it gets to a stage, not only are you probably going to make a mistake in braking, you could easily lose the front and you literally go flying not far into the barriers. And because of ride height devices, this single-handedly meant racetracks all over the world, like iconic racetracks like Mugello, like Jerez, Sachsenring, plus many others, had to modify and put barriers so far that it even gets to a stage that these MotoGP bikes now are literally outgrowing iconic, amazing racetracks for safety. But like I said about tires, these ride height devices and hose shot devices have been causing so much stress on the tires that Michelin had to bring in a new tire pressure system, which has literally caused so much chaos throughout the whole entire sport. Not only do you have to set a certain pressure on your front tire, it also means if you literally go over that tire, and we've seen this season with Maverick Vinales, who had an amazing Qatar Grand Prix, had an incredible performance on the KTM, had his podium pretty much stolen because his tires weren't at the actual pressures where it should have been, which means his podium was still like that, like Vanos snapping his fingers, because of pretty much these god-awful ride height devices. These MotoGP bikes now are so advanced that the front tire isn't advanced enough for these bikes. This Michelin's front tire we have now is a 2019 tire when these bikes look like this. Now MotoGP bikes look like this. The advancements of the bikes have caught up that the tires are just not capable, or literally just not good enough to cope with the stress and strain that these bikes absorb through aero, ride height devices, and God knows what else. But as much as I've literally said a lot of negative things really about aero and ride height devices and obviously the tire pressure penalty rule, there is some positive hope maybe in the future, because MotoGP has a complete new rule change coming in 2027, which for me is the biggest rule change to come to the sport since MotoGP went from 2 strokes to 4 strokes. Maybe it is the biggest change we've ever seen in the sport, because not only are these right height devices banned, whole shot devices banned, all devices on these bikes banned, there's also going to be a reduced in aero. The bikes are going to be a lot slower in terms of engine capacity, because they're going to go from 1000cc to 850cc in 2027. And not only that, the also biggest rule that's change is going to come to the sport is the tires, because MotoGP are going to go from Michelin to Pirelli. So it's a complete new white sheet of paper where everybody is starting from scratch in 2027. At the start of the video I said, has MotoGP become boring, predictable, and the bikes become easier to ride because of aerodynamics? Well, yes and no. We're going to start off with yes. Yes, MotoGP has become predictable, where Ducati are not only the best bike on the grid, they're so far dominant that literally in the last 3 years you need to be on a Ducati not only to win a championship, not only to win races, but you need a Ducati pretty much just to literally compete at the front in MotoGP. But there are exceptions, because MotoGP has a concession rule which helps other manufacturers close the gap to obviously the dominant juggernaut at the minute that are Ducati. These bikes literally not become easy to ride, because these bikes are so much aero on them. Why is this? Because of so much aerodynamics on these bikes, and obviously with the devices on these bikes, and then obviously you have to manage tire pressures and manage tire management as well, that it literally is becoming like, literally you have to understand the matrix just to ride one of these things. And obviously we're seeing so many riders now have arm pump problems, having had the surgery and arm pump problems, because you're riding the bikes and every single time it's going like this and this and this, braking every single time into every single corner, that the stress on your arms and literally on your body, that you literally have to, it's like doing an Ironman challenge riding these bikes now, because there's so much aero and so much, and they're so heavy, unlike they were back then where they were nowhere near as physical or mentally draining to ride than they are pretty much now, really. But that's all the negatives in terms of, yes, MotoGP has become predictable and boring, and yes, you probably need to be on the best bike to literally compete at the front. But also, no, MotoGP is sort of not boring, because MotoGP is motorcycle racing. It's a 40-minute race. You don't know what's going to happen. You could literally be leading the race, like we've seen with Fabio Quartararo at Silverstone, a fault to the bike, and it literally changed the whole complexion of the whole race. MotoGP is still one of the best sports to watch, because not only are the riders pushing to the absolute maximum, not only do you not know what could happen in a race. One guy could literally be leading throughout the whole race, and then a couple of laps to go, loses the front and goes from 25 points to absolute big fat 0. That's what makes MotoGP, is the unpredictability and the absolute fascinating racing that you will only ever get in motorcycle racing and in MotoGP. And that is aerodynamics in MotoGP. If you like this video, then hit the like button and subscribe as well. I hope you all have a safe and amazing day out there, and I naturally will see you guys in another video.